The Vegas Forward podcast delves into the lives of the people in our community, uncovering not only what they do, but who they are. Business may keep our city strong, but it's the individuals that continue to create, innovate, and push Vegas forward. All right, welcome to Vegas Forward. Today we have, super excited, a good friend of mine, Dusty Trevino, the CEO of .Vegas TLD.
Yeah.
What's up, Dusty?
Hey,
welcome.
not much, Nick. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate this.
Super excited to have you on
awesome.
here. Just to tell you a little bit about Vegas Forward and kind of like our goal with the podcast. It's really to invite people like yourself that are, movers and shakers in Vegas that have either created or innovated in town, built something special, and the .Vegas domain being Vegas, right, is a perfect fit for the type of people we'd love to have down here. So we're super excited to have you. So
thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about .Vegas. Just, what does the company do? What's your role within the company?
Yeah, sure. So .Vegas is, again, for lack of better terms, again, so we own and operate the .Vegas extension on the internet. So again, just like .com, there's now a .Vegas that represents, and I want to say more than just the city of Las Vegas, right? Because it really is. It's the community. It's the whole valley itself, right? It represents that brand. And so, again, now if you want an online presence and you want to associate that with Vegas, you can by getting a .Vegas versus a .com, right? So it's pretty simple in that regards.
Cool.
And so my role in the company is I'm the current CEO of the company, so I'm kind of just managing the day-to-day operations of it. And so really what we do is we manage a database of names, right? So somebody that's interested in it, you'd go to a GoDaddy or somebody like that, register the domain name that ends in .Vegas, and they're pinging our database and pulling those names out, and then it's being managed that way. So
Cool. And we'll jump more into the details of .Vegas and stuff. I wanted a little background about, kind of what you're doing. First, I wanted to kind of deep dive into like who you are, what made you who you are today. All right. Everybody wants to know.
Do you have enough time for that? That's a dark path too, man. Might be a dark path.
So tell me about where are you from originally? Where were you born?
So, honestly, I'm born in Spokane, Washington. Out in the Palouse field, out in Palouse, Washington, which is Eastern Washington, over in the wheat fields. Grew up on a farm, kind of thing. So very kind of, I want to say
rural.
Rural beginnings, right? Kind of thing. Went to the kind of very much like our school was a one-room school that had first through 6 or 7 grades in one room.
Oh wow!
And there was like there was grades where there wasn't even a kid in that class, right? It was kind of thing. And I think I was 3 kids in my class, kind of thing. So it was really interesting. But yeah, so kind of grew up that way. But then around middle school or so, we had opportunities to move, and we did. And we moved over into Bellevue, or right outside of Seattle.
Okay.
So that's really kind of where I really grew up. Then, kind of the important big years was over there in Seattle, and then went to University of Washington for undergraduate, and kind of went that path. So,
what was it like growing up in a rural town? Did you like it? Anything you miss?
I miss riding the dirt bike all the time, man.
Yeah.
It was like, it was early as I can remember, man. We had dirt bikes and go out and do that kind of stuff, or hop on, a tractor, or even drive cars around, stuff like that. It was everything you'd kind of want, You had pets, had plenty of room to run and play as a little kid, and streams, all that kind of stuff. And it was a lot of fun upbringing. Yeah,
and I grew up in New Jersey, which is, believe it or not, very rural where we're from.
Okay.
Everybody thinks of New Jersey and think of like Newark Airport and the smokestacks. And, I have fond memories of growing up, and back east it snows, right? So, sledding and, doing running around. Now we're in Vegas where we have no backyards.
No, exactly. Right. Yeah. It's a little bit different here now.
It is. So you went to high school in Bellevue.
Yeah. So by high school, we were over in Bellevue. So went to high school there in Bellevue, Washington, right, which is just a suburb of Seattle.
Okay.
I tend to say Seattle because nobody
knows Bellevue.
Yeah, nobody knows.
Microsoft is in Bellevue, right?
Yeah, they are. So they've taken over Bellevue. It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy over there.
So where did you go to school after high school? Where'd you go to college?
So from high school, then I did go to University of Washington, right over there in Seattle. And I went there all 4 years. I got my undergraduate in business administration from University of Washington, which was
cool.
Which is a great school. It was a lot of fun. You
still follow the football team and all that kind of stuff?
I do, not as much as I probably should. But yeah, I do follow them from time to time because we had a really good football team for a while there. And then we kind of got sanctioned and kind of fell apart. And then they've never really quite rebuilt after that. I mean, we've had some good years, but nothing like back in the old days with Steve Ettman and those kind of guys.
Oh yeah.
Right?
There was another quarterback that just came out of there that was, he went pro, but didn't Locker.
Yeah, Jake Locker, I think did. And then before him, when my time was Marcus Tuiasosopo.
Oh yeah.
Who actually I used to play baseball with a little bit or against. And he was a quarterback for UW, and then he went pro and he played for the Raiders, I think, for a couple of years.
Did he?
So he was kind of.
Yes, there's some history there. It's a great school though.
Yeah.
What's it like living on campus over there?
Campus was fun, man.
Yeah.
Like the first 2 years, actually, I actually lived at home for the first 2 years and commuted.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I was like, you know what, I need more of the college experience.
Sure.
And so then at that point, then I moved close to campus, right right outside of Greek Row, and got more of the traditional college experience. And so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it looks like an awesome campus. I've seen pictures.
Yeah,
So.
it's a beautiful campus.
That's awesome.
Beautiful campus.
So let's talk about a little bit of your career, because you have an interesting path. You know, one of the things I found interesting is you really started off young. You know, you worked in high school at an accounts receivable company. Tell us a little bit about what an accounts receivable company is, if I named it correctly. Kind of what your role was there.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and because the technical term, we call it factoring, but even kind of give you a little bit of backstory before that is, you gotta understand, like, so my dad's always been a serial entrepreneur. He's always wanted to build his own companies. And so by default, then I always had exposure to that. And I always took every opportunity I could to get involved to learn that aspect of business, right? And so, he'd gotten into that space, the financing space, accounts receivable financing space. And so, in high school, I went to work with him, right, to kind of learn the business, and started out filing papers, literally. Yeah. And then just kind of worked my way around the different areas of the business to understand it. Because it's a very, very unique business, because you're financing every kind of business you can imagine, right? And typically businesses, they're coming to you because they're young, they're growing rapidly, and they can't get bank financing, but they need the cash flow. And so they come to us, and we buy their receivables at a discount to give them the cash now, and then we wait to get paid from whoever they did the work for.
Got it.
And so, like I said, so it's great too, because you get to see literally every industry you can imagine. I mean, I was buying receivables from a guy who was shipping spam to Korea, you know, actually, even back in those days, we had a lot of people doing work here in Las Vegas, doing like the laser light show at the MGM, or when New York was being built. Most all of the inside of that was built by a company called Lexington Scenery Props out of California. They're a prop company in the movie studio. Well, they're the ones that got the contract for building out the inside of the New York. You kind of look what you see, right? And so we factored a lot of those receivables and that kind of stuff. And
How do you get into a business like that?
Just one of those things. You're just turning over rocks, right? You just turn over a lot of rocks, and that's kind of even what's led me to where I am today, right? Is you're just constantly turning over rocks and seeing what opportunities there are, and trying to learn as much as you can about anything you can. So,
how much did you were you working full time? I mean, like here and there?
Yeah, high school, not so much. I mean, I was probably putting in, maybe 10, 15 hours a week, just kind of filing papers. But by the time I'd gotten to college and undergraduate, I mean, I was probably almost working full time in the business at that point, because I was one of the kind of had the most experience besides obviously my dad. And so I was going to school full time and also working full time. Yeah. So, and then we actually got acquired by a bank holding company, a publicly traded bank holding company. My dad left, and then I was the only one there. So my senior year of college, I was actually running the business completely. Wow. Because I was the only one that stayed around.
That's crazy. And so you didn't have a job like all of us at like TGI Fridays?
I had some of those. Don't get me wrong. I've had some doozy jobs. I've worked in my fair sweatshop kind of things, kind of punching buttons. But yeah, so I was kind of, again, because I was really running the business at that point for the bank, because most all senior management had left at that point. Until then, I left after I kind of right around when I graduated college.
And then right after you graduated college, you went over to the accounting department at ENIC Corporation?
Yep. Yeah, and so again, that was another business that we actually came to us by default of factoring. They'd came to us for financing. Okay. And it was a company that owned the .cc top level domain, and so. That'll probably kind of lead us down this other path, but so they own and operate .cc, which was actually a country code for the Cocos Keeling Islands.
Where is that?
Yeah, so it's over there. It's a tiny, tiny little island. I believe it's off the coast of like kind of New Zealand or Australia over there, and flights go in like once a week, right? So if you fly into it, you're stuck there for at least at least a week or 2 weeks, right, before you're getting back off the island. But anyway, so a gentleman had acquired the rights to that, and under ENIC Corporation. So my dad had transitioned over there, and then when I graduated, I transitioned over there as well to go work in the accounting department, and kind of start learning that industry, because it was really, at that point, this was what, 90, 98, 99, so kind of still in the very early infancies of the internet, right? And so it was very intriguing for us. And so, yes, I went over to work there for a stint anyways.
And how'd your dad specifically like handle learning such a different industry? I mean, he's a sharp guy. I've met him before, but I mean, for anyone, it's really tough to kind of, just jump in and all of a sudden you're in this domain world, right?
Exactly.
And even for you, like what were some of the challenges like learning a whole new industry?
Yeah. And it's one of those things like anything, right? It's always a constant learning, right? You're always learning. And so for him, though, more than anything is just that he's a voracious reader, right? I mean, anything he can read, he'll get his hands on, and it doesn't matter what it is. And he loves to learn. And I've been fortunate. I've kind of acquired that as well, where just kind of constant, always curious about things, right? And want to read. And so, but then, he comes from it. And so even if you don't necessarily know the industry specifically, you have a good idea. He has a great idea of business sense, right? How to build businesses, sell them, and that kind of stuff. And right. So it was more of that expertise. The gentleman who actually owned the rights to it and actually owned the majority of the corporation, he was your classic, that's his subject matter expertise, right? He's an internet guru guy. He knew it inside and out, but he maybe didn't understand all of the business side of things, business structure, that kind of stuff.
Which is the harder part, right?
Which is it takes a lot to learn too, right? And so that, that regards. And so we came over to help out and kind of build the business that way.
And how long were you guys part of the business?
I was only with them for actually probably maybe about a year.
Okay.
I know my dad was there longer. Like I said, because then around 2000, it was literally right before September 11th of 2001, with obviously the tragic attack, VeriSign, who owns .com, came and acquired .cc. And so we sold the business. The business
good timing to sell right before.
Yeah, which is funny too. It's actually supposed to close after the fact, but VeriSign wanted to hit their quarterly numbers. So they sped up the acquisition because they're publicly traded. They wanted to hit those. They wanted to show a nice growth in their quarterly numbers. So they actually sped up the acquisition ahead of time to book that. And then, I want to say we closed literally like September 1st. I mean, it was something crazy, 2 weeks before it happened.
And did anything like negative impact them after the fact, or where is the .cc domain now?
It's doing really well for them, actually. It ended up being a great acquisition. Because now, like I said, what you'll see with these is every once in a while, like something just happens, and now .c is picked up, and it's big in China because they associate it with I forgot what it is, but it's kind of a Chinese. I don't want to say Chinese term, but it's some kind of term that they're familiar with, they've associated with, and so now it's big in China. .cc is
interesting,
and those numbers are hard to get because it's a count or a city or not a city, excuse me, a country top level domain, so they don't have to necessarily release their numbers about how many domains they've sold. So we don't know for sure what it is, but I mean, I know when we sold to VeriSign, I think we had 400,000, 500,000 names in the database.
Oh, wow.
So it was a good sized database.
Sure.
Right? I mean, it's no .com, but it's still, they had some pretty good names.
How big is .com? Because I know it's impossible to find a .com.
That's the thing, right? I mean, I think last I saw, they were pushing 130 million .coms out there. And that's, what the problem you're seeing in our space right now is that inventory is very, very difficult to get right.
Whenever I look for a domain, I'm like making stuff up, and even fake names are taken.
Well, yeah, exactly.
It's frustrating.
Right? And then more than likely, if you are buying a .com, you're not really buying it from VeriSign anymore. It's somebody who's already registered it, and you're buying it from them. Sure. Kind of call it in a secondary market, right? Where it's somebody has already bought it and registered it. Now they're just trying to make a couple extra bucks.
Which can be a difficult road to navigate, for a novice. It's like you have private registration where people's names are hidden. And then you have like randomly GoDaddy be like, oh, buy it in our auctions, but then you bid on it and nothing ever happens. So, I mean, what do you recommend for people that are looking to get a domain name that's taken? Is like, what's the best route to reach out to somebody and acquire that domain? Yeah,
that is good. That's a great question, right? Yeah, because if they don't have up a lot of times, because like a lot of times they'll have a website at least up and says, hey, this domain is for sale, and you can ping them that way, right? But if they don't have that, and yes, you can't find who registered it through what's called a who is lookup again. So there is something called a who is lookup, right? Which you're probably familiar with, right? Where you can look it up and information is supposed to be posted on who owns that domain name.
Correct.
But now there's privacy blockers in place too, where so it's not all, and most people use that now, so it's really hard to find it. So if there isn't a website up there for it and their who is blocked or the privacy is in place, yeah, your best bet is then to kind of like go to like a GoDaddy marketplace. It's probably the biggest, or maybe
there's a lot of brokers and stuff. They charge 10 times what it's worth.
And that's a problem, right? It's kind of, it is hard, right?
Yep.
But they're out there, and you should just hope that maybe it is on a marketplace somewhere and it's a reasonable price.
Yep.
I think they say most, honestly, .coms sell in the secondary market for like $300 to $500, right? Other than you always see those one-off ones that are, $500,000, $1 million big purchases. But for the most part, you shouldn't have to pay a lot for them, right? If you're talking the secondary market.
Cool. So jumping over to, more of your personal life here, which is kind of interesting. You traveled a lot, which is cool. After you guys sold Enoch Corporation, I saw you went to Spain for a year.
I did.
With your brother and your buddy. And I won't tell your wife, Jen, all the stories that happened.
If you're watching, turn this off right about here, or earmuffs. No, it was pretty, we were pretty good, right? But yeah, it was great. We had a great opportunity once Enoch sold to VeriSign. Again, it wasn't anything for me I wasn't going to be staying on and going to work for VeriSign or anything like that. So it was a great opportunity for me where, again, I'd kind of just graduated, trying to figure out now what was next.
Sure.
So I was like, hey, you know what? Let's go take a year and kind of enjoy ourselves, try to learn some Spanish, kind of thing, right? That was the excuse, is we want to go learn Spanish in a culture. And so, so we really just literally sold pretty much everything I had and put everything in a backpack and moved to Spain with my brother and my best friend and just had a blast.
What city were you in?
So we started down in Sevilla, down in southern Spain, which is phenomenally beautiful city, rich in history. Some of the history now that I read about it, of course I didn't when I was there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
After the fact, I've read all about the history and like, wow, that's what that was. That was pretty cool. I did a lot of did some stuff in that building that I probably shouldn't have. Exactly. That's there from like the 1200.
The history is crazy out there.
But the history is absolutely phenomenal. So we were in Sevilla for like 6 months, which again was a beautiful city. And then, because again, we moved there. We were supposed to fly out the 13th of September of 2001. So right after the attacks, right? But things got delayed because of that. So I think we ended up there like around end of September. So we spent the first 6 months in Sevilla roughly. And then once the weather started getting nice again, the next year, then we moved down to Cadiz, which is down on the kind of on the western coast side of Spain, over there a little bit below Portugal. Yeah, and then spent another 6 months down there on the beach. And it was crazy. Like back in those days, we had a fully furnished 3-bedroom apartment on the beach. So we literally would wake up, look out the windows to see what the weather's like, and the beach is right there. And we paid $330 a month for that place. So
those days are over.
Yeah, those days are long, right? So it was like between the three of us, it was like $110 a person, right, for rent in a fully.
Was that like before the euro or so? Why was it so cheap?
It was. I mean, it was definitely. It was interesting. Yeah. So we were there when the euro got introduced, which was quite interesting and exciting to be a part of, to see that happen, of a complete change in monetary exchange. And then too, at the time, definitely before it was part of the European Union, the economy of Spain it wasn't great, right? And I think it's still probably not great. The high unemployment, very socialistic, social welfare kind of country.
Sure.
And so cost of living there was really next to nothing. I mean, I bet you it wasn't costing us more than $500-600 a month total to live there, right? So, and that was with going out to eat every day and hanging out, doing it up, right? Yeah. Traveling, that kind of stuff. And so, I've been very fortunate, right? And then we kind of use that as our base off, to kind of travel throughout the rest of Europe. And then definitely once we lived down in Cadiz, I don't think people realize how close the northern tip of Africa is. Not from Cadiz, but when you get down to like Gibraltar and the southern tip of Spain, you can see the northern tip of Africa is right there. I mean, it's only maybe 10 or 13 miles away.
Did you go? Or?
Yeah, so we take the ferry over into the northern tip. Then we catch the train down to Marrakesh and go spend like a weekend in Marrakesh. Just party down there for like 3 days or 4 days.
That must be cool. My sister's boyfriend's actually Moroccan, so
that's one of my favorite places, man, is Marrakesh, and Morocco is phenomenal.
And my poor sister had a trip planned there, and then COVID happened. Yeah,
so man, she wasn't able to go. Hopefully they'll still go. Hopefully she can still go.
Yeah, definitely.
It was that's one of my favorite places I've ever been to, just because the rawness of it. It was at least when we were there, it still felt like raw and original. It didn't feel contrived at all, right? It was awesome.
So what were some of the biggest differences you noticed when you were overseas compared to the US? And did you miss being home? Was there anything you were like, man, I miss doing this? Or were you just...
No, just having a blast, man. The biggest thing that's interesting, right? So before we went, and definitely from just a perspective of not even US, but when you're home, you watch the news about another place, and the news tends to amplify things instead of just giving you kind of an even keel thing, right? So once you're there, you realize, well, no, things aren't that bad. And then the one thing was interesting is like, we never watched any news when we were over in Spain, right? So I kind of lost that whole year that happened here in the United States right after September 11th, right? So I that whole thing like that most people got to experience here, I missed out on, which was a little, you know, it's a dig, but I have a completely different perspective too. Cause again, we were in Spain at the time. Nobody was traveling either at that point. So it was great. I mean, in terms of like, we were the only US people really there in Spain for about a year before things started opening back up. But yeah, we didn't really watch any news or anything like that, and just kind of got immersed the best we could. And just, you know, I lived with a host family for a couple of months to try to learn some Spanish, and then
how'd that go? Un poquito.
Yeah, un poquito. I can order beer. That's about it. So no, because I went to like a language immersion school for a couple of months, but I think it was like 80% of it was girls from Sweden and Switzerland. So it's like, okay, do I want to go try to struggle Spanish with my host family or hang out with some really
nice,
some lovely 18-year-old Swedish
it's a hard
girls,
decision.
Who want to, and all they want to do is like learn English, right? So it's like, well,
it's good to be a mentor, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So, but it was a really fun experience. I guess, you know, a little bit lost on being 24 at the time, right? I didn't do as much as I should, but it was still a really good be
it's awesome to be able to travel abroad and just experience different life, right?
Because
everybody's so much in their cubbyhole when it comes to the US and you know, venturing out is special for sure. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you left Spain, you then started another company when you came back, correct?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. Yeah.
And that's what, honestly too, again, we kind of always do things with a plan in place, right? So when we sold Enoch, we all kind of said, let's take a year off to kind of regroup a little bit. Everybody's kind of burnt out at that point, with the idea of, honestly, we'd already had it in place, is to then move to Las Vegas and start up another factoring business, another accounts receivable financing business.
Any reason why Vegas at the time?
Yeah, because one of the things we specialized in from the accounts receivable side was construction finance. Not a lot of people do it because it's a very specialized, you really got to understand lien laws and construction laws and that kind of stuff. And we knew it very well. And then at that point, again, you're talking 2002, 2003, Vegas was booming for that,
big
right?
time,
and there was, any of the research we'd seen, there was no local presence, no local factoring companies in town. So we said, look, this is a great place for us where you got a booming, growing economy, predicated around construction, and no local companies that do what we do, right? So it was like, hey, that's the place for us, right? And my brother had gone here before we moved to Spain. He had actually gone to UNLV for a few years, so we were kind of familiar with Las Vegas, right? And saw the great opportunity again that it had. And so so once we came back to the United States, we all relocated here to Las Vegas to then start up a factoring company again, and again get right back in the heart of building a business, right, and growing it and providing financing for a lot of smaller growing companies that needed the money and couldn't get it from a bank, right? So that's kind of how we got down here and doing that.
And then how long were you guys doing that? You sold that company as well. How from start to finish, how long was that? That
was probably, again, so I want to guess, we started that business up. I moved back like it would have been about, September of 2002. So by the end of 2002, we had that business up and running.
Wow.
And then, like I said, then we built that over the course of 4 to 5 years. And we were the largest player here in the valley with what we did.
And how do you acquire? I mean, your first customer, that must have been challenging, right? Because you don't really have a reputation, but you do from the past. Like, how do you build, trust in, with a particular customer?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, right? And a lot of it comes down to, right? So I'm not a sales guy, right? And that's one of the things like my dad is really good at. He's a great sales guy, and so he's the one that would go hit the streets. And really, what it was is we work with bankers primarily because. It's a great avenue for a banker when somebody comes to them for a loan. And if they say, look, we can't do it, but they give them an option. And instead of just saying, sorry, we can't help you.
Send them away.
It's like, we can't help you, but here's somebody who might be able to, right? So that was really the best way for us to kind of bridge that gap is really go network with bankers, let them know we exist, who we are, what we do, and that kind of stuff. And then, just do everything you can to show them that you're a credible person, you're a credible business, and that kind of stuff, right? And then you start getting referrals, you start getting business, and then it just kind of builds from there.
Are there competitors here now? since you guys have?
There's still not much local. The gentleman who bought our company the second time, he's still here. He's local, great guy, great business, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think he might still be the only local. Most of them now are bigger companies that maybe have a satellite office here, or at least just a sales rep, but don't really have much of a local presence, really.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you have an interesting background in school. You're, finance and MBA, et cetera, and then the School of Hard Knocks, right?
Exactly. Right.
How do you compare the two? I mean, like, without that experience when you were young in high school and after college, like, I don't know, would you be as good if you didn't have that? I mean, probably not, right?
No, like I said, like everybody says, right? You learn more from your mistakes than you do your successes, right?
100%.
As well as, look, there's school and real world are completely two different things. There's no doubt, right? There's nothing better than learning things the hard way, actually getting into the mix of it, right? I mean, academics and real world are two different things, right? You need them. You need them both. Yep. But the things you learn in the real world are stuff that you could never learn in school, and you need those, right? Yeah. So, and that's what was fortunate too with, and I would always recommend people, like, you got to get in the trenches as quickly as you can, right? Don't put that off. Right. You need the academics, but you need to get in the trenches too and learn as much as you possibly can. Don't shy away or be offended if somebody asks you to file papers to start, right? You got to start, you got to start somewhere, and you need to understand every aspect of the business, especially when you get up to, like, let's call it a C-suite kind of executive. Yep. Right. To me, I wouldn't respect somebody who hasn't been in the trenches either, right? Mm-hmm. And likewise, vice versa. Again, I think people respect you a lot more if you're like, no, I've done that. I know exactly what you're going through, right? Yeah. Versus, well, I have no idea what that is, right? Sure. It's like, no, I've filed the papers, I've crunched the numbers, I've done data entry, I've done all that stuff, right? And so I think that's very, very important. And there's nothing better than just to get in and start doing it.
Yeah. And like, I grew up in the restaurant business. My cousins, my uncle actually owned Italian restaurants. And my cousin and I, we were busters. We were out there in the summer peeling potatoes and my cousin's still in the industry and he's managed and run restaurants in the past. And like, he wouldn't be able to run it properly if he hadn't been peeling potatoes and doing the hard stuff. Exactly. And I always recommend, because my thoughts on college are a little bit different. Like I liked it for the experience and for being out on my own and finding ways to scrounge up enough money to get a piece of pizza to eat for dinner, but like, and meeting new people and putting yourself out there, but I always recommend go out and get an internship, do something just to get your feet wet and learn anything, kind of be a sponge, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, and like I said, because I mean, you're right. Like, kind of going back to the academic side of things, like, I've always kind of had a narrow focus, right? I mean, my undergraduate was a bachelor's in business administration with a concentration in finance, right? Sure. Because I'm a finance guy through and through. I mean, like, that's what I love, right? And even when I then got my MBA, same thing. It was also a finance concentration with. At that point, I got a little bit outside of not just corporate finance, but capital markets, because I'm very interested in capital market stuff as well. Mm-hmm. But again, it always has been kind of a very narrow focus.
So that probably helped a lot. So
yeah, it did, right? I mean, it was.
I went to hotel school, so look at me now.
Yeah, but
where's the hotel?
No, hey man, it's done well for you, man. You got a good little thing going. So
that's cool. So I noticed that we talked about it. You sold 2 different companies. Yep. What was it like being part of that transaction? Because it's a scary thing, right? Selling a business and getting your feet wet and learning all that. What was that like? Tell me.
It is scary, but like anything, you're more scared of it's the unknown, I guess, that you're scared of, other than the actual process itself. Once you go through the process, you realize it's a very simple process, and it's not that bad. I mean, so again, when we came down here, we started up our factoring company, and again, we kind of dominated the space, and so we had Bibby, who is the largest company in the UK, and they've been around for 200 years or plus. Like, it's crazy, their history, right? They showed us like the history books on what they've done. And they came here and they wanted to start a US presence. And because we kind of own the market, they're like, okay, well, let's acquire these guys, right?
Sure.
Huge company, blah, blah, blah. But again, when it boils down to it, super nice guys, and an acquisition process is fairly simple, right? They're going to come in, kind of do a simple due diligence on your business, what's going on. You come up with a kind of an idea of what their valuation would be like, and you kind of horse trade it back and forth, and then it's a fairly simple transaction, to be honest with you.
Would you evaluate it, or just would the other side typically do the valuation?
They'll do the valuation, right? Because again, bottom line is they've got to make sure that they they do their due diligence, right?
Sure.
But then at the same time, then at the end of the day, it's just going to come down to horse trading or whatever. It's like, because I'm not going to sell for anything less. I'm going to sell what I want for, and they're not going to pay for anything that they're not willing to pay for. So after that, but like as long as they've done their due diligence and feel comfortable with it, and you can come to an agreement, then like I said, it's pretty simple. And so we'd sold that business, right? And again, that was around 2008. Because believe it or not, because we were so close to kind of money flow and finances and again, also kind of economy and stuff like that. Sure. We were really afraid of what happened back in 08 and 07.
Yeah.
We were really afraid of that was going to happen. And so that's one of the reasons we sold the business. We sold all of our houses. We sold our commercial building. We literally went to 100% cash.
Oh, wow.
And then I was like, look, we think things are going to get bad. Now, we had no idea it was going to get as bad as they did.
Sure, yeah.
But then that's why I was like, okay, you know what? Nothing's really going to happen for the next couple of years. And so that's when I went back and got my MBA, because I'm like, look, we went to cash.
Sure.
Things are kind of go to hell in a handbasket for who knows how long. And so it was a great opportunity then for me to kind of go take 2 years, go get my MBA.
Yeah.
And that go around was definitely a little bit more of because I worked so much during my first go around in undergraduate, I didn't really get to enjoy the college experience as much.
Yeah.
So my MBA, I kind of made up for it a little bit more.
Good.
I was like, all right, now, you guys want to go for drinks at 2:00?
And where'd you go for your MBA again?
To TCU in Texas.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah. So it was great. It was a really nice program right out there in Fort Worth, which is right
2 years or?
Yeah, it was a 2-year program. There was only like 55 or 60 kids in the program. That was one of the reasons I chose it. It was a very small MBA program. So you got a lot of really great one-on-one with the professors. You got to know all your classmates. And then too, one of their big things was they had a really nice capital markets club. They were like one of the first like student-run investing clubs that were started by students at a university. And we actually ran real money. Like I think we had, at that point, I think $1 million or $1.5 million that we actually got to invest. And so we do the whole deal, being put on your little analysis hat, right, and do an analysis on a stock and that kind of stuff.
That's great experience. Like that's probably why I never had that in college. Yeah, it was very like it felt like a very general.
Yeah.
Kind of wish I had that kind of hands-on type of experience. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It was interesting, like I said, and they really did. It was very hands-on in the fact that like you got credit for it, but it wasn't a traditional class. It wasn't like a professor sat up there and gave you a directive. It was like you had to interview. If you got into into that club you did, or that program side of things, then once you did, it's like, okay, you're assigned, I think I was assigned like 3 different companies that we currently had in the portfolio. And I had to just basically, with no really direction, like, okay, you need to do a complete brand new analysis on these companies. Oh, wow. What's the valuation? Should we add to our position, close the position, reduce the position? What should we do? And then as well as like, you need to find 2 new companies that you need to present to the group to see about adding into our portfolio, right? Okay. And it was very, very much like throw you in the fire, hands on. Again,
so every student would do that, and then how would you guys choose which ones to move forward with?
So that's thing. So you'd give up and you'd get up and give your presentation, and if you did a good job doing your presentation, they would add it to the portfolio. If you didn't, they wouldn't add it, right? But again, there really wasn't much direction. It was basically, you go figure it out, right? It's like,
but that's life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
When you're out in the real world, that's the way it is.
And that's what was really great about it, right? Because it was like, it wasn't like a professor said, okay, you need to look at doing this, or this. It's like, go figure it out, put it together, come back to us, and you'd have, a week or 2 weeks to put together your analysis on the stock or the company. And it was a lot of work, but it was a great learning experience for me. That's awesome. For sure. Because it wrapped in everything you're learning academically in your accounting classes or whatever, right? So because then at that point you'd know how to read a balance sheet and a profit loss.
It probably helped you a lot in your career too, right?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's
awesome.
It was great.
Cool.
Great. So it was a fun program. I loved it.
So let's chat about .Vegas a little bit.
Sure.
So my best, I asked this question earlier because I'm always fascinated when people start businesses that I'm like, how the heck did they get into this, right? Yeah. It's not like some morning you wake up like, I want to buy a domain extension.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me about the infancy of acquiring the rights to the domain, and how did you get it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And again, this really goes back to, again, seeds that were planted 10 years, 15 years, 20 years prior, where again, we got exposed to the industry again, back in CC, back at ENIC with the .cc, right? And so and that got brought to us again, because we were in financing business and we get all these things brought to us all the time. And so we'd kind of, again, we got exposed to the industry at that point, kind of fell in love with it, because of what it is, the potentials, and really what you're doing, right? You're talking about being part of the infrastructure of the internet, right? This isn't a website or something like this. You're talking about internet infrastructure here, which is boring yet kind of cool in a way, right?
Yeah.
And so again, we'd gotten exposure to this back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And even though, again, we sold to VeriSign and all kind of went on our separate ways and went back into finance, stuff like that, we'd always kind of kept an eye out with what was going on. And we did that because, again, not a lot of people realize is that the internet is run by a company called, not a company, it's an organization called ICANN, which stands for Internet Corporation of Assigned Names and Numbers.
Okay.
And they control the internet. They control the top level domains aspect of it, .com, .net, .org, all that kind of stuff, right? For lack of better terms, they manage it, right? And so we'd always kind of keep an eye on, and because of it, we knew that they were going to go ahead and release a program because they wanted to start democratizing the internet, because .com was such a big component of it.
Sure.
They said, look, that's great, but we need to have some other options out there for people, right? And so they had started, this was all the way back in probably 2007, 2008. They had started talking about, look, we want to democratize the internet a little bit more. We want to create a program where people can apply for a top level domain, their own domain extension, right?
Okay.
And it took them a long time to get that figured out how they.
And you guys were following it the whole time?
Yeah, and so we followed it the whole time. I think the first time I did anything was, 2007 or 2008. I flew to Paris for one of the ICANN meetings when they first announced that they want to start this program in place, right? And then again, it took them like 4 or 5 years just to figure out, well, what is that going to look like? What's the application process look like? What do we need from a standpoint of, who these people are? How do we vet, right, them, and then how do we give that domain name or that domain extension to it? So again, long story short, again, they kind of came out with it because we knew the space and we were here in Vegas at the time, and we'd made really good inroads in the city and had a lot of great people, had some really good network in place. We're like, look, we think it makes a lot of sense to have the city of Las Vegas or Vegas have its own domain extension. It's such an iconic place, an iconic brand. It made a lot of sense, right? And then kind of stars aligned where we had the industry expertise, we had, kind of the financial backing of it, we had the right people in place to get the endorsements we needed, because we needed the city's endorsement at that time.
And the experience with the .cc is huge, right?
Yeah. And so again, kind of the stars kind of aligned for us. ICANN finally got all their ducks lined up. And I think this was probably 2013, 2012 when they officially came out and said, okay, we've got everything we need. We're going to open up this window. And it was only like a 60-day window where you had to submit your application.
How many people applied? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, they had actually around 1,400 or 1,500 people apply for extensions.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it was a big deal, right? I mean, because of people recognized the opportunity with it. Now, a lot of those were duplicates or triplicates. Like, again, I think you had 9 groups apply for like .app. Right.
Got it.
So then what would happen is ICANN then put those out, and they basically had to go to auction with it. And then those 9 people that applied for .app basically went to an auction, and the highest bidder won the rights to that. Right.
Okay.
With how we worked is because we were considered a city TLD at the time. There were certain requirements in place, i.e. you had to have the endorsement of that city. We had the endorsement of the city, so we didn't have any competing applications, right?
Got it. Okay.
So that's what was one of the nice things with us going for that versus a generic like a .app or a .club or a .xyz or something like that, which they've been very successful, by the way. They've done a great job with their stuff. But and so so you had, again, like almost 1,500 applicants, and I'd say about that, you probably had about 1,000 unique domain extensions. And I think about 400 or 500 of those being brands. Pretty much every brand went for theirs as well. I mean, Google went for .google, Amazon went for .amazon.
Yeah.
Now, they don't ever plan on selling those like a .com, right? They're using those internally for their brand purposes, right? Or .ibm, understandably. So you had about 600 domain extensions that were truly out there.
I didn't realize there was that many.
Yeah, there's quite a bit, right?
Now I see a ton, but I didn't know they released that many that early.
They did, right? And that's one of the things that's kind of interesting that kind of happened, the seismic shift you saw in our space, where it really did start democratizing and commoditizing our space as well, where before you had a little bit more pricing power because again, your options were .com, .net, if you're an organization, and .org, and then, that was really about it, right? Yeah. And now all of a sudden you've got 600 different things to choose from. Sure. And literally whatever your passion is, you can probably find a domain extension for that. I mean, they even have like a .horse and .unicorn, right? Yeah. So it's like, you got everything. Yeah. But because of that, they really did kind of commoditize our space where the pricing power isn't quite what it used to be. Yeah. Which is fine. I mean, again, that's the way you want. You want to create a system of liquidity and then kind of create a nice equilibrium where there's a good supply and demand of this stuff, right? So, but yeah, that's what happened because we officially got the approval from ICANN in 2014 early, and then we officially launched September of 2014. So that was the first time you were able to actually register now a domain name that ends in .vegas. Yeah. And again, so one of the weird things too is like, again, people don't realize we're a highly regulated industry, right? I mean, again, ICANN kind of they set policy, blah, blah, blah.
Is that a group of people? Like what is, is it like a board of some kind?
It's 12 board members from across the world. So it's very international. Okay. And yeah, so I think it's 12 board members. They sit on the board. They it's become very, very policy driven now, way more than it was when we first got involved with it. But yeah, so one of the things like they put in place is we're what's considered a registry. So we own and operate the domain extension. Mm-hmm. We're actually not allowed to sell that extension ourselves. We have to go through what's called a registrar, and that's a GoDaddy that everybody knows of, right? Yep. And there's thousands of those guys out that you can that you can buy it from. And so, like I said, it is unique in the fact that when we launched, we still had to have a partner who would actually resell it for us, right? And so, kind of think about us as like, we're kind of like a manufacturer, right? We manufacture a Snickers bar, but we don't sell it. We send it out to a, a grocery store or the local AM, PM or whatever, and they sell it for you. Got it. Same thing with domain names. Right?
Why do they do that? Just so
I think they were afraid at the time of somehow, and I still don't quite understand, I guess, because I've never really looked down that path that much, to be honest with you, but I think they're afraid of, you somehow taking advantage of certain names in your database if you own both the database and the distribution channel itself. Sure. Because I mean, it is interesting, and not to digress too much, but in .com, they get to see all that traffic, right? They see all the traffic to certain .com domain names. Mm-hmm. And there's ones that are so valuable that nobody has any idea how valuable they are, but they know. But VeriSign knows because they see the traffic, right? Yeah. They see the DNS lookups and that kind of stuff. And so I think ICANN was afraid of like, well, look, it's almost too much power, too much information for a group to have to be able to control both sides of it. Yeah. And so in that way, they're like, no, you can't. And they started loosening this up now a little bit, and you'll start seeing registrars and registries now can actually own each other. Okay. But that's just something that's kind of really recently been happening. Yeah. But again, when we first launched, that wasn't the case at all, right? Everything had to be it really was like an arm length where it had to be completely third party.
And how do you select the registrar you want? Is it your choice of who you want to work with?
Or? Who wants to resell .vegas, man? Like
really?
Honestly, like anybody that wants to resell it.
So what if nobody wanted to? I mean, could that happen? Yeah. Like we have .unicorn and
it really could. And that's that's kind of really too what's happened is that you realize the registrars are very powerful in the fact that, again, because they control your distribution. And if you can't get one, especially in our space, a GoDaddy to pick you up, or to put you in a good placement for people to see you, you can it can hurt you, right?
Well, that's what I noticed now with all the extensions. You do a search and says .com is taken, and it'll say .net is taken, .org is taken, and then you go down this long list, and the order in which you appear is increases the likelihood of getting purchased.
Exactly, right? And again, and that's the thing. What they've struggled with is, how do I present this inventory to people in a good, concise manner, so that I don't lose a customer because I've inundated them with too much stuff. Yeah. But then also too, so like they've really done a great job, but it's taken them some time too, is like, again, trying to do basically intelligent search results. So when somebody's searching for a domain name, they do the best job they can presenting them with the best extension that they think that person would.
Based on geographic location, right, IP or something.
Whatever it might be, right? It's the term that they're searching for, whatever. Right now with us, it's an easier, because like you said, they can do it via geo-targeting, and that's what GoDaddy does for us. Because it basically, so any IP address that comes from Nevada, they make sure a .vegas shows as high as we can, right? But there's a lot of other things they use into their, we call it a spinner tool, but that spins out domain options for them, like you said, when .com is taken, which unfortunately right now is quite often, right?
Yeah.
But now there's a whole thing like in our space that you have to kind of pay to play, right? So a lot of times when you see, if you search for a domain name and you'll see like, let's say the first 5 ones that show up as options for you, those are domain extensions, they're paying for that placement. No different than like a Google AdWords, right? Where you pay Google to show up on the thing. Same thing now is happening in our space from a search perspective on these registrar pages.
So every time, for every impression, or is it like a click or like?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's for impression. It is for impression.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the margins are not massive, right? So that could gobble up your budget.
Yeah.
Do you guys advertise or?
We really don't. Again, we've been really fortunate because we have a defined target. We have a defined audience, and that being Vegas for the most part, like just geographically speaking, that we've been very fortunate where the registrars have been willing to give us placement without having to pay for that stuff. Right. Yeah. Again, we're not a dot, and I don't mean to say this to in a derogatory term towards a generic, but I don't know, like a .xyz, let's say, right?
Yeah.
And I know Daniel .xyz has done a phenomenal job with that TLD, but you kind of have to create your audience, right? You've got to really, you've got to brand yourself and then not convince, you got to tell people what that brand is and why they should be using a .xyz versus, let's say, a .vegas, which to me is
a built-in story.
It's intuitive, right?
Sure.
And so they have a little bit bigger of a hurdle of, okay, and so then as a registrar function too, it's like, okay, well, why would I present this over something else? It's just a generic term.
Yep.
If you need to help me identify who your base is and or, kind of pay for placement kind of thing.
Got it.
Right. But again, nothing disparaging because he's probably one of the most successful ones out there right there. I like his TLD quite a bit. He's done a great job branding.
It's got to be tough to build a brand around .xyz.
Like I said, I got to hand it to him because I was like, I didn't see it. I'm like, I don't know how you're going to do it. Because to me, the whole reason ICANN did this and to apply for these new TLDs was to get away from a generic term like a .com, which didn't really mean anything. It's like .commerce, right? So I was like, I figured people would gravitate towards things that were more descriptive, right? Like again, like a .baseball or a .vegas or .nyc versus that. But again, I got to hand it to the guy. He's done a phenomenal job with it.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the top ones out there right now.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, he's done very well.
So what did you guys do locally, not nationally, but locally to kind of get your brand out there? Is there anything when you first launched, any strategies, alliances, things like that you guys created? Yeah.
And that was really like what we focused on. And we've just now honestly just started kind of pivoting away from that. But when we first launched, our biggest push is to find some big civic organizations that we could try to work with to rebrand or at least to use the .vegas, right? And so, so for example, like NPR, right, which is a great local kind of civic, I'll call it a civic organization or whatever like that, right? So we worked with them to kind of launch some websites on a .vegas. Obviously, the city is a big partner with us. So even though they don't own any part of our business, or the extension itself, they are our partner with us in it so we pay them a royalty on every .vegas domain name that's sold.
Sure.
And so again, same thing as where the city has launched numerous websites off of the .vegas as well, right? So we spent a lot of time working with those kind of governmental or quasi-governmental agencies to get them on board. And again, we've been very fortunate. And even like one of the ones which just happened organically, but was awesome, was Goodwill, completely rebranded Goodwill.Vegas.
Oh, wow.
And you'll see that now even like a lot of anytime that kind of like now when they're wrapping their vans and that kind of stuff or their big trucks, they'll wrap it with the Goodwill.Vegas domain name, right? So we were very fortunate on that. So that was kind of our big focus first initially, was like working with those guys, the Chamber of Commerce, those kind of organizations.
Yeah, because they're like the heart of the town, right?
Exactly.
Things kind of trickle out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then because again, it is interesting where like, again, I don't control that distribution, right? Again, so GoDaddy does. Likewise, they control the message, right? So I can't even really create my own message because I still have to have a call to action. And as soon as I use a call to action, like go to GoDaddy, then they want to control that message or at least say, no, you can't say this or this. Because we tried that and, but we can't speak disparagingly against .com or anything like that. So again, it's a really weird thing, right?
Yeah.
But again, we did really well. when we first launched, getting some nice PR blitz, kind of on the news, did a big launch with the mayor.
Yep.
We actually had GoDaddy come out for that. And so that helped generate a lot of publicity for us too.
Yeah.
And again, so when we first launched, we had what's called a land rush, and all these have it, right? So the first few days, you get basically 80% of your registrations come in those first 2 days when you first launched. Right?
And what's the retention rate been? It's been strong, or?
Yeah. So that's one thing with us. Excuse me just a second.
And I always remind you, I still own my .vegas
I love
wedding
it, man.
domain.
Yeah, I love it, man.
I'm like, damn, $20. All right.
Yeah.
All right, Dusty.
Thanks, Nick. I'll catch you a check later. That's one of the things actually I've been really excited about is with these strings, we have one of the highest retention rates, right? So the gold standard, again, is .com. They're at around an 85 to 88% renewal rates, retention rates.
Yeah.
We're right around blended about a 70 to 72%.
It's good though.
So it's really good, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, because typically these new TLDs are more in the 60 to 65% retention rates. So we've been really good with that, right? And again, we're a very niche market here with what we have. Again, I mean, just as an example, again, like we talked about .com, I think 130, and that number could be even higher now. How many domains, right? We're sitting at around 12,000 names in our database. So again, we're not huge by any means, but we've got a great little niche database. It is growing every day. I will say that's a beautiful thing. Is like the more people see it, and you're starting to see that now, where people see it a lot more around town now, and then the more they see it, the more people realize that, no, this isn't just a fad. We didn't just pull this out of thin air and created this or whatever. I mean, we did, but but again, we're still regulated. It's a big industry. This is never going anywhere again. We've been embedded in the worldwide internet, in the root zone. This is never going anywhere. Even if we fail, which, again, not anything's possible. I mean, I don't see it happening, but even if we did, the domain extension cannot fail. ICANN has mechanisms in place that somebody else takes it over and runs it. So it's never going anywhere.
Yeah.
This was a huge, like we always say, this is one of the most significant things we've ever done. Yet probably gotten the least amount of credit for or understanding for it, because people don't really realize like how important this is and how much work this was 5-6 years just to get us to the starting gate. Right?
Oh, yeah.
We did 5 hard years of groundwork,
time, money, everything.
Exactly. Just to get to the starting gate. Right.
Yeah.
And again, it's significant, but I do think it now people are starting to realize, because we've been around now. I think we're just now going on almost our 6th year right now.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like we're finally starting to get that critical mass. It's taken us longer than we ever thought it would, but we're to that point now where people recognize it and see it, and like,
I'm seeing it now I see it on, Earnhardt, like the, dealerships, car commercials, billboards. It's kind of cool because I know you, so I'm always proud. I'm like, oh, .vegas.
I know those guys.
Yeah. But it is pretty cool. And I think it's also a testament to the city, right?
Yeah.
Like how that brand, like whenever you tell people like I'm from Vegas, they're like, oh, cool. They think you're like living at the Bellagio, right?
Exactly,
You're in Mountain's Edge. And
yeah, exactly. I have no idea, right?
But the city has so much brand equity, in the name, and it's and like we talked about this earlier, it's not a local thing. Like even New York City, to a certain extent, has a more local stronghold, right? Yep. Vegas is like everywhere. I mean, you can be from all over the world and Las Vegas, and so that probably helped, get the brand growing. And so, what are some of the things that you'd recommend as to why a local business should purchase a .vegas domain?
Yeah, I mean, my thing has always been is that, look, if part of your brand is Vegas, right? And you want to be associated with Vegas, this is the best way to do that in a true play way, right? So again, because the counter argument is, well, look, I'll go get joesplumbinglasvegas.com, right? Versus joesplumbing.vegas. Can you do that? Absolutely, right? Yep. But also too, you got to recognize every time you advertise, you're partly advertising .com as well, which has no brand equity to Las Vegas. They're not local. All that money that they're getting stays over back in Herndon, Virginia, right? Kind of thing. They're a publicly traded company. Yep. It's a pure play branding on Las Vegas. You're not diluting your brand at all when you use a .vegas, right? It says it all. As well as, again, you're supporting a local company. We're here locally. Yeah. And part of that money goes back to the city, which then they obviously use to invest in initiatives and projects and stuff like that, right? Sure. So that's kind of, I guess, the spiel I go is like, look, if part of your brand, and again, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you like you have to have a .vegas, right? Sure. If Vegas doesn't enhance your brand, then don't use it, right? I mean, it's fine. It's not going to hurt my feelings. Like, use a .com. I mean, you could use a .com all the time, right? And we're still friends. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I mean, again, that's what I go. It's like, look, if it makes sense for your brand, use it. If not, don't worry, it's fine. I mean, we'll be fine.
Yeah, and we've done some studies here actually using .vegas domains back in the past when you first launched. And people were always worried about their organic rankings and things like that, which is not true.
Yeah.
.vegas domains do rank. There's no negative impact whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the fears that people have is like if I move from a .com to a .vegas, and there's ways to do it the right way, you know, through redirects and things like that to assume the old role of the ranking and stuff like that. So I think it's great. I mean, I think it's brandable. You know, my wife, as you know, is using a .vegas domain.
That's a saving grace for you right there. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I've got 2 domains.
Yeah, that's true. You do have that. Yeah.
So what are the most popular markets or verticals of that acquired .vegas domains?
So real estate is definitely one of the ones because pretty much every agent wants to have their own website and their own presence.
Sure.
And to me that makes the most sense too, because again they want to brand themselves with this community they're serving or the geographic region, right? So definitely, real estate agents, and then I would probably say legal. Because kind of the same thing with that, with legal. And then from there, it's just kind of your spattering of kind of small or mom and pop kind of shops, right? Whether it's a plumbing company or it's, kind of a local restaurant or something like that. But the ones that are easy to identifiable for me is definitely the real estate in legal terms.
Were there any markets or industries that were surprising that they didn't take advantage of it?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, because when everybody thinks of Vegas, they think of Sin City and they think of all the stuff that happens here, kind of like, I won't call it red light district, but definitely kind of the escort or the adult entertainment side of things.
Sure.
I thought that'd be huge for us.
Yeah.
And we've seen very little that I can tell of that kind of registrations, right? We haven't really seen any of that kind of adult entertainment side pick up the extension, right? And that's been the biggest surprise for me.
Any casinos getting in on it?
So pretty much every single casino owns their name in a .vegas. So one of the interesting things is before we actually launched to the general public, we did have to allow trademark holders to come in and protect their trademarks first. Okay. And so through that process, yes, everybody you can imagine, MGM when everybody came in and got their names. However, they have so much brand equity built up in the .com side. Very few of them had been reluctant to, I think, completely change over to the .vegas, right?
Interesting.
And I get that, right?
Sure.
Obviously, I'd love to see them use it, and I think it makes a lot of sense for maybe for more of a local feel. But so far they haven't. They are starting more and more starting to actually light them up, at least, if nothing more, as a forward to the .com. With the one exception I will say, which I've been really happy about, El Cortez in downtown. They actually use a .vegas, and I see it advertised. They actually advertise El Cortez .vegas. Yeah. Like, because I fly Allegiant all the time, and I always see their insert in the Allegiant magazine. It's El Cortez .vegas. So they actually not only redirecting it, but they're actually using it as advertisement too, which is great. I mean, we really appreciate that. And I know Hakkasan Group was actually using in .vegas for quite a while. They had started to develop it before COVID hit and stuff like that. I don't know if they still are, but they're starting to come around.
Some of the show sites, right? Directories.
Yeah,
aren't they using it?
Yeah, there's some guys like that too, right? And again, because a lot of these bigger organizations, right? They're not. A domain is kind of second thought to them, right? They're worried more like, let's get people in the door, let's get you at the tables, or let's get you in the clubs, right? But they are starting to come around. Those guys take longer to kind of have them come around. Yeah. But they're starting to, and again, that's where we're seeing a lot of encouraging signs right now, which we've been really happy about. So, and kind of going back to again, the city's been a great partner. They really do. It seems like a lot of their new initiatives they've been launching on the .vegas, like the innovate .vegas, which is a great website, which I think you guys might even kind of work on that a little bit.
Did. Yeah. We built that site, and actually we had Michael Sherwood, who I love. He was down here as our first guest.
Oh, nice. Yeah. He's a great guy. Like I said, he's done phenomenal stuff for the city and kind of the mindset from a futuristic standpoint or a technology standpoint. We've been really excited to work with him as well. He's been a great guy. And like I said, and so them launching innovate .vegas was, love to see that. And just kind of goes to show you their forward thinking as well. I mean, too, I got to hand it to them in general, right? I mean, we're one of only 4 U.S. cities that have one of these domain extensions, right? Yeah. So it really does speak volumes to the city and Oscar Goodman, who was mayor at the time, understanding the vision that we tried to bring to them and show them of like, look, this is a unique product, right? And so we're one of only 4 U.S. cities. It's us, New York, Boston, and Miami. It really does put us in a very elite field. And two, people don't understand, like, this right now, ICANN as it stands right now, they're not opening this process up ever again.
No.
So it's not like tomorrow I could be like, oh, I want to start up a .Seattle or a whatever. It's like,
exactly.
No, you can't do it. ICANN's closed the process. It's not available.
So there's only 4 city.
So in the U.S.
Oh, wow.
Now there's, I think about a little over 50 around the world. You've got like a .London, a .Rio, that kind of stuff. But from a U.S. perspective, it's just 4 of us.
And you mentioned to me too, which is kind of interesting. I didn't know, is that like .NYC, for example, you have to be a resident in order to buy it. But with Vegas, because it's an international brand, anyone can get one.
Yeah,
right?
and that was one of the great things, right? That we were excited that we kind of had asked for, and we were glad that the city understood and recognized as well. And again, go back to kudos to Oscar, where he recognizes, like, again, Vegas is a worldwide brand. It's a worldwide destination, worldwide brand. Why would we limit somebody in the Midwest or even, in Europe who maybe wants to brand themselves with Vegas? Yeah. Why would we not allow them to do that by saying, no, you have to live here or have a business here, right? Where a lot of the other cities did. I mean, New York, unless you live there or you have a business there, you're not allowed to register a .NYC, right? Which, I mean, I can get that, but but at the same time, I like the position we're in because, again, our brand is so important. And, honestly, we've got at the time, and I got to double check, but I mean, we had a couple of big groups so Vegas is a big term in Russia, believe it or not. And in Australia, they always talk about Vega. It's like Vegafying things, or like it's a term for like making it big, right? When you say Vegas. Yeah. And so we've got some really nice registrations out of those places because they love the brand. It's like, that's exactly what you want, right? It only helps the city. It only helps the LVCVA with their branding of Vegas, right? So to me, it's been a win-win for a lot of these guys. So,
that's great.
And for us, I mean, it's been great.
So where do you see the company going in the next 5 years? I mean, that's kind of a ways out, right? Yeah. But like, is there any new things you're going to be doing or direction you might take the organization?
I mean, honestly, right now we're just trying to continue to work the market the best we can, making sure people recognize that the opportunity is here for it, what it's about, and to use it, right? Because I really think of benefit. In terms of like, I don't see necessarily any major technological changes or anything like that to our business model, that kind of stuff, right? Because unfortunately, even though we're in a technology space, we're not really like innovating new technologies per se. I mean, there are some components of that in that, but at the same time, is because we're more on the internet infrastructure side of things, there's not a lot of new technologies.
It's like owning real estate, and you're kind of like waiting for someone to buy the real estate.
Yeah, right. I mean, exactly, right. So I mean, but again, I feel like we're hitting, and we've hit that kind of that critical mass now, where again, people see it more often, and it should just continue to build from there. Like, again, when we ran .cc, it was one of those things too, where it just kind of was there, and then all of a sudden something happened, and then overnight it just starts going like crazy, right? Sure. And that, when they picked it up in China, it just exploded, and I think the same thing will happen here, because again, it's definitely taken longer than we thought it would to get to this stage. And again, a lot of it was because we knew the space, but I didn't realize how .com centric we are here in the United States, right? Again, when you travel to other countries, specifically Europe and that kind of stuff, you hardly ever see a .com. It's you mainly see the domain extension of that country, like
.co.uk.
Exactly, right? The .uk is for UK, .de for Germany. Yeah. And so they're a lot more familiar with seeing that and knowing that that's a legitimate option. Here, I guess we underestimated how .com centric people are here, and they didn't realize, because .us has really never done much, right? I mean, we've had our own, country code for .us, but it's never really done much.
I think it's just a mental stigma. I mean, people are always like, when you do a Google search, you see .com, right? Yeah. And now you're starting to see other domains start ranking and things like that, but it's not as visible. Yep. And so people, I think, are scared to like lose out on traffic, or to, if you hand out a business card, they're going to type in the wrong, extension, and there's some of that stuff. And there are hurdles for you guys, obviously, got to overcome. No, and I think that's a great point, and definitely that was the case, and it still is to a degree. I think, again, that's the nice thing about with time, is that's becoming less and less of a hurdle. It was definitely in the early stages, right? Because you'd say, oh, go to my website, the.vegas, and be like, oh, the.vegas.com. Like, no, .com is just the.vegas, right? Yeah. But again, the more people become familiar with it, they'll start realizing, there's whatever it is, a .foundation or a .whatever, right? Sure. It didn't have to end in com. Yeah. And because you're right too, again, that was the thing we always heard, is like, well, this is,
Google's not going to recognize it, or I'm not going to get search. I'm like, look, if you're not getting SEO'd under .vegas, you're sure not getting under .com either. That's not a top level domain thing, right?
Yeah.
That's another issue.
Must be, yeah, website.
Because Google applied for 20 or so of these themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So Google has an invested interest in as to making sure that these, they own, obviously .google, but they own .app, they own a bunch of them, right? And so they're again, and I can't speak for them because I don't know what goes and what goes into their algorithm from a search result perspective.
Sure.
And I know that changes all the time, right, too. And a domain is just one small component of numerous other things. Yeah. But I do know, and I think I can say with confidence, it's like, the .vegas or any extension is not going to hurt you. It's going to rank the same, or it's going to have the same effect as a .com would, right?
100%. I remember when I first started Adlava, like the biggest thing was get a keyword-rich domain. Yeah. So everyone was out there buying like personal injury lawyer LasVegas.com, and didn't matter how long it was, as long as it had the keyword in there. Yep. And I remember the dumping of the domain names when they changed their algorithm, and it didn't matter anymore. Yep. And for me, when I look for a domain, it's more about the brand, right? It's like, you either find, like I have adlava.com and quotable, but like, you want something that's memorable. Like, so, the domain my wife has, like homes, that's pretty cool. Homes.vegas.
That's
right?
A great name. Exactly.
And so
Absolutely.
She's always like answering the phone, like homes.vegas.
That's awesome.
So it makes her sound like she's like this big organization. Right. So, I think it's just the brand value is the way to look at it. It's not really, is there a keyword in it, or is it, is it memorable? Right. So,
and I think you're right. And because that's the one thing I think has always transcended time in the domain name space. Cause you like you said, is a perfect, great thing to say too, is like, for a time there, you wanted a keyword rich domain name because the search engines really looked at that. Now, not so much, right? Yeah. But what's always transcended time is, like you said, to me, a short, memorable domain name, right? So no hyphens. Correct. And you want to try to keep it as few characters as possible, 4 or 5 characters. Yeah. And that's what you always see too in our space. Like, and I'll just use .com just because it's a better thing to have examples from. The shorter the domain is, the more valuable it is, right? Mm-hmm. Because people recognize that is more valuable, right? Yep. So, if you can't even get a single double character .com right now unless you're going to pay upwards of $1 million, right? Kind of thing. It's crazy, right? Yeah. And so, like, and that's a great thing with us is, again, with call it 12,000, 13,000 names in our database. I still got heck, somebody yesterday just registered events.vegas. Like, that's a great domain name. And that was available. Yeah. I think it'd been registered maybe a few times before, but it was available again where somebody could have gotten. That's, to me, a great domain name.
Right? With one word that means,
I saw welcome.vegas come through the other day. Yeah. Somebody ended up letting it expire. And sure enough, as soon as it gets expired, names like that get scooped up pretty quickly, right? Because to me, those are great names, but they're still available to get. That's, kind of the point.
And what's the price point range?
Yeah. So, and that's the interesting thing, right? So we wholesale our names to a registrar. Mm-hmm. A registrar marks it up, and they mark it up anywhere from, maybe 10% up to 100%, depending upon the registrar. And then the registrar does that, predicated upon kind of the offerings they do, right? How good their customer service is, that kind of stuff, right? Like, if you were going to pay a registrar that only marks up 10%, it's probably because they don't have much of a customer service. Whereas like GoDaddy pretty much doubles our price of our domain name. Okay. But it's because you get outstanding customer service. You can call them up at 2:00 in the morning and you're going to get somebody who's knowledgeable and be able to really help you out.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. So having said that, I think the lowest right now, I've got a couple of price promos with some smaller registrars, like a name silo, which is great. I think they're selling our names for $7 or $8 for the first year of a create. Oh, that's great. So we're very competitive with .com. Yeah. But then a GoDaddy, I think, is $19 or $20 for the first year. Okay. So we're definitely more than a .com. Yeah. But we wanted to do that because we see ourselves as a niche, specialized TLD. Yeah. And so we and as well as, again, there's some really good names out there. So to me, it makes more sense, right? It's more valuable. And so we're a little bit more premium than a .com for sure. But but I still think we're not, it's a good price.
So let's talk a little about Las Vegas and its future and stuff like that. Obviously, we went through the pandemic or COVID, whatever you want to call it, and it was devastating to the town. How did it impact? Because your business is digital, right? Yeah. It's not a tangible item. How did it impact your business? Was it positive, negative? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we were actually very fortunate in the fact that we were one of those industries that didn't get hurt and it actually saw a little bit of a boost from it because, again, during that pandemic and people stayed home, they started realizing how important your digital identity was,
Sure.
or to even have a digital identity.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, what's the first thing you need? You need a domain name, right?
Yeah.
So just across the board, our industry, whether it was net, org, us, .vegas, .nyc,
Mm-hmm.
we all, again, we were very fortunate. We actually kind of benefited from it, right?
Yeah.
So we saw a little bit of an increase. It started to now kind of revert back to the mean, right? Back to the averages, but it definitely for the initial, we did okay as well. Again, we weren't reliant. We're not a business that relies on walk-in traffic or working with people face to face, right? Everything's done with computers.
Exactly.
That kind of stuff. So I will say we were very fortunate with
We
that.
noticed the same thing at Adlava, like right after or during, people were at home all the time, sick of their kids and their and their spouse.
Yeah.
And they were, staring at their website or their software, and they're like, man, we could do better, right?
Yeah.
So we got a big spike right afterwards, and things have kind of, settled down a little bit, but noticed the same thing.
Yeah, so I'll say, and kind of this is a little off tangent, but I think kind of in the same realm here. One of the things I think is really interesting, unique about the domain name space, and again, it happens more prevalent in .com because it's a bigger one, but it's a great indicator of where things are going. Because the first thing somebody wants to do is register a domain name with whatever's trending or about to trend in that time, right?
Yeah.
So there's people literally that will watch the .com zone file. So you can actually get a download every day of every domain name that was registered in the .com zone file, or even our zone file for that matter. Like you can choose whoever you want and find out what domains were registered the day prior. And there's people who literally watch those because you want to know what new movies are coming out, watch what's getting registered, right? Because they got to register those names a year, 2 years before, because if they want to make sure they protect it. That's one of the first things they do now to protect their brand or whatever they're doing is you got to go register that domain name, right? So it's really fun to watch that. And we see that to a degree in .vegas, right? So when COVID first hit, I mean, geez, our database just every day was blowing up with COVID related domain name registrations, right? As you can imagine. And the health district came in and I know they got a bunch of COVID domain names .vegas, right? And then redirected it for any of their COVID kind of stuff, right? And so, but that's one of the things I think is if you want to see the pulse of what's happening or what might happen, watch the domain name.
Did you see a big spike when the marijuana law was passed and things like that?
And then what was really interesting is before they announced the name of the hockey team, the Golden Knights, we saw what everybody thought it might be because we saw all these speculative names kind of being registered of what they thought the name might be. Right? So it was like it was interesting. So we saw that. We saw when marijuana was about to get past our database. Same thing as like every day I wake up and I get, the log of the registration from the day prior and it's, it's all marijuana names. Right. And then like I said, then it was all COVID. And then like I said, and then at the same time, like I said, cause I watch it every day, I'll start looking like, oh, that's kind of an interesting one. I wonder where that's going. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, a new show's coming to town here next month. Right. It's like, oh, I knew about it. Well in advance. I
never knew that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, actually, in fact, one of the without giving away too much, one of the big groups here in town asked me to sign an NDA before they registered their domain names, so I wouldn't give away the name of their new hotel and casino.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
really?
so it was interesting because they knew I was going to see it.
Yeah.
And they wanted to do a big reveal, so they said, "Hey, we need to have you sign an NDA."
You should tell us because I haven't had anyone get sued yet on this.
Yeah, right. I don't want to be the first. But yeah, so I mean, because again, so we see stuff in real time, right? Which is really
anything unique that you saw pattern wise, like during the pandemic of like a trend towards besides like vaccine related. Was that the only one that would?
That was really one that stood out to me. What was kind of just the COVID awareness, vaccines, testing, that kind of stuff, right? I'm trying to think if anything else stood out, but that was about it. But like I said, something did pop up the other day. I can't think of it now, and even then, I probably shouldn't say anything. But something did pop up of potentially a new event or something new coming to town that I was like, oh, it's kind of interesting. I'll see what happens there. But like I say, so it's that's one of the unique things about our space, right?
Yeah.
But again, anybody can register. You go to ICANN's website, I think it's icann.org, and you can actually sign up and get a data dump of our zone file. I think almost on a daily basis, and I can't deny anybody from doing it. I've tried. But otherwise, I get my hand slapped by ICANN. I have to get everybody access to my database. So you can go in and look at my database anytime you want of every name.
I didn't even know that you could do that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
You can do that for any one of these generic or in either one of these TLDs. The only ones you can't are the country code TLDs, like, again, .cc. Anything as a country code, they have a little bit more privacy protections in place. But otherwise, yeah, you can get a data dump from my database if you want.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I'll jump ahead because I know we're running out of time. Yeah. So I'm gonna jump into some personal questions.
Oh no,
now.
okay.
It's not the hot seat.
Oh,
yet.
not the hot seat. Okay.
No.
I don't have to be nervous yet.
So what I know you're an outdoor guy. Yeah. Like, what are some things you love to do in Vegas or even outside Vegas? I know you guys just bought a new house and you're out in Lone Mountain area.
Yeah.
What are some things you like to do here in town?
Obviously, it's just the biggest thing for us is hiking and camping, man. Yeah. I love that. And like, there's so much to do around here, which a lot of the stuff, like, I hadn't really explored before until I got married, because my wife's, my father-in-law is great, like kind of off-road guy kind of stuff. And so we've got explored a lot, but going up to Red Rock hiking, man, there's nothing better. You get back into some of those canyons, get like Icebox Canyon or Pine Creek, man.
Yeah.
You get there actually around this time of year when we haven't got a lot of snowfall, but if we do, you can actually, there's, plenty of water back up there too, which is really unique.
Where is that?
You hit up like Pine Creek and you get way back up there, and even Icebox, you've got I don't know if you've hiked Icebox, but there's a waterfall at the very end of Icebox. It's spectacular.
Oh, cool.
Again, and usually around this time of year, we've had a lot of snowpack and it's starting to melt. And so you get a really nice waterfall. This year isn't as great. But otherwise, no, you get back up there and you have no idea you're in the desert, man. It's awesome. It's great.
That's one of the common themes with everyone I've had on the show is like, what people think of Las Vegas is completely opposite.
Yeah.
And it's also, I was in Scottsdale last week with my kids and, it was just 45-minute flight, and you're there, right? And so close to LA, but just in town here, there's so much hiking. And where do you guys go camping usually?
Head up to CC Springs. So actually right on the backside of Red Rock.
Yeah.
Again, not a lot of people up there. Or not a lot of people know about it. So like, we'll head up even on a Friday night and still get a nice campsite, and it's absolutely gorgeous up there.
You guys tented, or you do a glamping style?
No, we tented. We're pretty.
I have to get my wife an RV or something.
Yeah, I know. I'm starting to get up there in age, so it's like the roughing it isn't as fun as it used to be, right?
Yeah.
I can't just sleep on the dirt anymore like I used to.
Have you brought your daughter out there?
We did actually.
How did she like it?
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Not good.
No, she loved it. It was crazy though. I was like, this was like last year, a year and a half ago. So she was like 1, right, or 1.5, and we decided to take on our first camping trip, and we head up to CC Springs, and we brought up a lot of stuff because we wanted to make it comfortable for her. So we had a great time, got the tent set up, blah blah blah, put her down. And all of a sudden we start hearing this, like, just this violent retching noise in the tent.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck's going on, man? We go in there, like, she all of a sudden got sick for some reason, was just vomiting all over the place.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was bad. And she'd never done that before, right? And now it's like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, right? It's pitch black out. We're out in the middle of like, thankfully we're only like an hour out of town, but like, what the heck do we do? Like, do we try to wait this out, or like,
Yeah.
And then I was like, we can't, like, right. Something's going on. Like, she got really sick.
Did she eat something like?
That's the only thing I can think of, man. Because like earlier in that day, like, she seemed fine. It wasn't like she was showing any kind of symptoms. So I'm just wondering if maybe she ate something around the campsite that
maybe the tent was too beneath her. She just like,
yeah.
I need nicer accommodations.
So it's like 10 o'clock at night, man. I'm breaking down the campsite in the pitch black, right? And again, because we try to be like a little bit comfortable, we've overpacked, right? So it's like, I had one of those like big memory foam mattresses, right? That expands once you put it out. So it's like, I'm sitting there trying to shove it in the back of the truck and it won't fit anymore because it's expanded. I'm like, son of a, my daughter's still sick. And then we get home at like midnight, and oh man, it was rough. It was rough, but it started out great. So, and then like I said, with the move, we didn't get a chance to go this summer, but this summer I want to get her up camping some more.
That's awesome.
Because CC Springs is great, man. It's just
how far is that?
So you just take up Blue Diamond, like you're heading up to Pahrump.
Yeah.
And once you kind of go up over the pass, you drop kind of down, and there's a cutoff on the right-hand side, and I can't remember the name of the road, and you take that way back in there. It's over by the Torinos, have a big ranch out there, beautiful ranch.
Yeah.
And it's kind of right in that area.
Yeah.
But again, not a lot of people know about it, so it's great little, very like primitive campsites out there, right? You get a little fire going, and it's.
Do you just rent them for like the night, or
no? You don't even rent them. You just go out and just find a spot and throw up a tent. And yeah, you just like it's. I've
been to like a camp. We went to Sedona for a campground.
It's none of that fancy stuff, man. This is like it literally pull your car over the side.
First of all, I can't go camping alone because I wouldn't know how to set up a tent. We'd be screwed.
We'll go camping, man. We'll get you out there.
Bring me.
I'll set up the tent for you then at least. So no, that's a great spot. That's a lot of fun to do that. And then,
that's awesome.
Yeah. And then we just try to get out and we do a lot of exploring kind of off-road and stuff like that, going up to some of these places I've never gone up to, kind of like the old mining towns and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Which has been a lot of fun.
So you enjoy living here? Do you see yourself staying here for a long time? I mean, you just bought a house. So
I know.
You're here for a while.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I plan on being here. This is kind of my first place. Again, it's one of those things like, if you would have told me that, 15, 16 years ago when I moved here in 2002, roughly or so,
sure,
I would have said, no, like this was going to be a temporary place, going to move here, kind of take advantage of the opportunity. Because that's one thing beautiful I loved about Vegas and still do. The opportunity here, if you're a good worker, good head on your shoulders, good at what you do, I've never been more welcomed in a community than here. Yeah. I mean, again, we could have never done this.
It's a small town. Everybody knows each other.
Yeah, it really is, right? Like we could have never done this. Like again, so I'm originally from Seattle, right? Mm-hmm. We could have never done this in Seattle. Applied for the .Seattle domain name and extension and gotten it because we weren't a macaw. We weren't part of the Boeing, Boeing. We weren't part of the Nordstrom family, anything like that. They wouldn't even look like here, man. Like that's one thing I've loved about the city. So again, I plan on staying here. I do love it here. It's taken me some time to get used to because again, come from the Northwest, I'm used to the greens and mountains and that kind of stuff. But there is a great beauty about the desert.
It's a great home base. I always tell people because it's so easy to go. There's so many things to do. There's always a new, forget casinos now. There's always a new great restaurant that opens up or some sort of cool little local bar or like shopping centers, they're always building and creating, which I love.
Oh, for sure.
Nothing ever gets stale, So.
And they are really doing a great job now, I think, of creating a community here. I mean, I've seen big changes in that to the positive, right? As more of a community feel just in the last couple of years, right? And I think that was the one thing Vegas was kind of lacking for me. But that's changing, right? And I really do think the addition of the sports teams, definitely the Golden Knights and the Raiders, and now that they've moved the 51s up to where we're at, like I said, that's really, I think, really helping create that community sense here. Yeah. And I love that. Like, right. I mean, it's
I noticed a big change. I remember telling my wife, I'm like, because I'm a big hockey fan, as you know, and I was like, man, when we get the Knights, mark my words, it's going to really build a community. She's like, it's a hockey team. I'm like, I grew up watching sports my whole life, and I just because I knew what it's like when people get behind a sports team, right?
No,
and we had that tragedy with the shooting and everything like that. And the Knights, started like a week or two later or something like that. And so the city's really embraced the team, and it really has changed the dynamic here for sure.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's one of those kind of universal things that everybody can kind of bond around is a sports team, right? Because it's a universal language, I guess, kind of being a sports fanatic and stuff like that. And even people that, like, I'm not a huge sports guy, right? I mean, I enjoy sports. I grew up playing, sports, that kind of stuff, but I don't really follow it. But at the same time, it's like, it's still a great way for me to have a conversation with somebody that I don't know. And it really does bond people together, right? And I agree with you. I think you're spot on. I think as silly as that might sound, I really do think that's a major component of building a community, at least starting to build the community. And so, I was happy the Golden Knights come, the Raiders, again, they didn't really have a chance to play this year because of COVID, right? And I think next year, all things considering, if they're able to, that's really going to help out. And
without a doubt.
That kind of stuff. And, kind of going back to the shooting, as tragic as it was, I think it showed how great of a community we have, man. The outpouring of support after that was amazing. Just like the people donating blood and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it showed you what a great community we have and how passionate people are about this place. And so, I mean, again, I love it here. Again, I didn't apply for the .Vegas for just for whatever reason. It was because we love the city. We loved it here. And again, I wanted to hopefully have a big impact in the future of the city. Right. And again, because now this is we have a digital city online. Right. So, I mean, that's why we did it too. So I plan on being here forever.
Yeah, me too.
It's a great place.
I'm with you on that. So, all right. So I'm going to jump over the last couple of questions because of time and go straight to the hot seat. So do you want me to ask you all three questions? You answer one because I've got three.
Yeah, I like
you like that.
Yeah, because then I can kind of
because I had trouble because you and I are good friends. I know you. I've known you for a while, so I was like, what do I ask Dusty?
You don't want to throw me under the bus too.
I don't want to. I don't want him to get a divorce or like So I'll ask you. There's some strange ones. Hard to answer.
Okay.
All right. If you were transported 400 years into the past with no clothes or anything else, how would you prove that you were from the future?
Oh, shit.
Number two, if you were wrongfully put into an insane asylum, how would you convince them that you're actually sane and not just pretending to be sane?
Wow. Okay.
That's question two. And then besides me, right? if you could have the hair of anyone, who would it be and why? That's probably the easiest one.
Yeah, that's the easiest one, right? Fabio, because he's got just gorgeous golden locks.
Fabio?
Yeah, no, I know. Somebody, dude, like I said, it's so strange, man. I have dreams about hair. Just being able to run my hands through it. Like, what would that be like, man? It'd be so nice.
I'll let you try it after.
Yeah. My wife wakes up in the middle of the night and I've got my hands running through her hair. She's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, don't worry about it.
So no, Fabio's the answer?
No, I'll answer one of the other ones, actually, because those are interesting.
So there's four.
Yeah, because I just want to think about that. Like, yeah, the how would I prove that I'm from the future if I have
no clothes?
No clothes, no nothing. You have nothing to do it. And I wish if my memory was better, I'd be like, try to, tell them what's going to happen. But like, I have no idea. Like, because
predict sporting events, maybe?
Yeah, but at the same
400
time,
years ago,
400 years ago, yeah, you don't even know what it is. Like,
by the way, don't have answers for these questions.
Yeah, well, I mean, well, the thing is, like, it's one of those ones there really is no, I mean, there's an answer to a degree, but it's more of like how you get there or what you're thinking. But
so if you were wrongfully put into an insane asylum, how would you convince them you're actually sane and not pretending?
Well, I am insane, so that's okay. I'd just stay there, man. I'd be in heaven. Strap me up, man.
Yeah.
I'd be in heaven.
Give me some medication.
Yeah, turn out the lights, man. That's my jam right there. Padded room with no lights.
I like that.
That's my jam.
That's good. We'll go with, okay, you're already insane.
Yeah.
And then Fabio is your hair.
There you go.
The past one is tough. I don't know.
The past one is, like I said, because I mean, you'd have to figure out, right? I mean, some knowledge base that we've gained in the last 400 years, right? That they wouldn't know about, but yet be able to understand.
400 years is when?
I mean, like
1700s.
Yeah, I mean 400. Yeah, it'd be like 1600s.
I don't even know what they had back then.
Yeah, it's like, could you do algebra?
Did they have lights like this?
Yeah, but I couldn't produce
make a light bulb.
Like you couldn't make a light bulb, but you can't explain it.
It's honestly a terrible question.
Well, I mean, it's terrible, but it's really good. Like, how would you do it? Like,
I stole it from someone on the internet, that one. So
maybe, I don't know, man. I really want to kind of figure that out, though. I like that one.
I'll send you a copy of this. You can answer it later.
Okay. I'll send you an email once I figure that one out.
So where can everyone find you? Like .vegas, like where can they go purchase a domain or learn more about you and the company?
Yeah. So for our corporate kind of website is the.vegas, Vegas, right? Or that's where you can kind of information out of us. There's not much there, right? Because it's just kind of the minimum of what's kind of required by ICANN that just says, hey, here we are. Here's what we are. Here's what we do, right? We're ICANN accredited, blah, blah, blah. In terms of registering a domain name, the best thing I can say is like, look, go to whoever you typically register your domain names through, whether it's GoDaddy or Network Solutions or Namecheap, whoever it is. And like I said, because pretty much all the big guys resell or sell our domain names to let you register them. So I don't think there's anybody that doesn't that people would know of, right?
Okay.
So yeah, just go there and do a search, see if there's a name you like and pick it up.
Cool.
Like I said, we appreciate any support you can give us. Like I said, we always love to get the registrations. And like I said, I mean, it's really a great way to kind of tie yourself to the community in the valley here. So
without a doubt. Well, thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome.
So,
I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good, buddy.